Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Sher. And once again, it's time to square off. Here's our panel for this week. The amazing Jimmy Mathis, Pastor Shannon Wright, Hassan Giordano, and Chris Kennedy. First topic. It took the jury a little over 5 hours to find former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby guilty 2 counts of perjury, facing a possible 10 years in prison. Chris, you're our attorney. What do you think? Start us off.
I think this was to be expected. Most people don't really get involved in criminal proceedings, and even less get involved in federal proceedings. The U.S. Attorney's Office has a conviction rate of 98% across the country. And to take this case to trial was foolish. Perhaps the plea bargain wasn't worthwhile, even though it was a misdemeanor. But I see it as a clean verdict. Every tactic that Mosby tried to create an appeal issue in advance was defeated, because the judge gave her not 1, not 2, but 3 postponements of the trial. After a third of century of practicing law in Maryland and federal courts, I've never seen anyone get 2 postponements, and she got 3. She asked for the case to be bifurcated into the 2 separate charges, one for the perjury, which is just what happened, and then the other for the mortgage fraud, which is another trial that's due to happen. That was granted. She asked for a change of venue with what I thought was deficient evidence, but nonetheless, the judge granted that as well and moved the case to Greenbelt. So I don't see any pretrial issues, and I think the conviction is going to stand.
For those of you that might not be familiar with the case, Mosby was convicted, as Chris mentioned, about lying and about suffering financial hardship during the pandemic to withdraw money from her retirement savings in order to buy a pair of properties in Florida worth $1 million. Shannon, what are your thoughts?
Well, I had the opportunity to meet Miss Mosby before she was elected. And one of the things that I had said to her, and I said very clearly, you are a young Black woman. You have to make sure you do things above board and beyond reproach on all things, because the spotlight will be on you. Now, there are things that other folks may have done and thought they could get away with as a private citizen, that as a state's attorney, someone who is supposed to be steeped in the law, she will not be able to get away with. I do feel bad for her as a mother raising 2 girls, and how that will be, and how that the difficulties that's going to put on them. But we just have to know that our justice system, our legal system works, and that the verdict that came out and the future trial is going to be fair and just.
If there is a future trial, we'll discuss that in a little while. Maybe they can put everything together with a plea bargain. Chris would know about that. Jimmy, then Hassan.
I've never been a fan of Miss Mosby. Anybody that's followed me over the years knows that. I'm not defending what she did, and I'm not saying that the courts weren't within their purview to move forward on the conviction. It just does not feel like equal application of the law. It feels anybody other than Miss Mosby would have had to pay the 90 grand back, get slapped with a fine. Whether she wants to run for public office again, that's for the voters to decide. Again, I'm not defending what she did, and I'm not saying the courts got it wrong. It just doesn't feel like anybody else would have been treated the same way.
Hassan Giordano, great to have you back. What are your thoughts?
Always pleasure, Rich. Well, look, I disagree. I think if you look at the Justice Department, how they've moved in regards to the COVID and the CARES Act and the misapplication of that across the country, there have been charges of individual citizens the same way we've seen in the case of former State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. I agree with Chris. Judge Grisby went out of her way to make sure that the defense would never be able to come back with an appeal issue on this particular case. I think went above and beyond what she actually or any other judge normally would have done, especially as another African-American female presiding over this case. Eric Barron and his office deserve all just due. They didn't let the politics of the day kind of dissuade them from bringing forth these cases. So across the board, I think it was fair and just. The only problem is the Mosby family, unfortunately, like the Reverend said, it's her daughters who I worry about. They used to play with my oldest son, Malik. they're going to have to deal with this news moving forward.
That's a good point. Jimmy, go ahead.
I don't really see any way that she avoids jail time on this. You look at the history of politicians in our state that have got wrapped up in the legal system, from Ed Norris, Catherine Pugh, Darrell Sosa. They all did jail time, and they didn't go the distance of the trial like Marilyn Mosby did. So there is definitely a precedent for jail time being handed out with corruption in city politics. So just looking at the way that this has gone in the past, I don't see, it may not be a lot of time, but I don't see how she's not doing 6 months to a year.
And I think part of that too, I would love to hear Chris's take on it as an attorney, but going forward with the mortgage fraud trial coming up, she has an opportunity now possibly to, one, be able to take a plea deal instead of going full forward like she did in the fraud case, and kind of saying, hey, let's make a deal and try to get the most lenient sentence. Or she can be bullheaded like this one and say, no, I'm moving forward. I'm testifying, what she didn't testify in this one. I think that ended up hurting her. Or they could come with superseding indictments on her, both her and Council President Nick Mosby. So there's a lot that could happen, but I agree with you. I think some kind of jail time is going to be set forth by Judge Grisby.
Chris, before you talk, let me ask you this. In retrospect, wouldn't it have made more sense for her attorneys to leave this case in Baltimore, where people know, and many like Marilyn Mosby, and there could have been one or two people on that jury who might have, voted against conviction. But to go to Greenbelt, Maryland, where nobody knew her, did that make sense to you? Or what would you have done? And then you can respond to Hassan.
So great point by Hassan, and great question, Richard. There's a pros and cons to moving it to the northern division or the southern division. Ironically, when the case was first filed, she thought that the jury was just going to be pulled from Baltimore City, because, with no disrespect, her trial experience is very minimal. She's never tried a jury trial of any kind in her life, and was unaware that the Northern District draws from Garrett County, Allegheny County, Cumberland County, Cecil County, Harford County. Okay, that's part of the Northern District, and they are equally pulled as the jury pool. So it's not like you have half Baltimore City and then a few people from Garrett County. It's equally pulled. And in the Southern Division, it's folks from Prince George's, Montgomery, and all of Southern Maryland and parts of the Eastern Shore. So there's arguments both ways on that. I think she probably thought that there were less people familiar with it down there than up here. But in terms of going forward, I think it would be an enormous mistake for her to take this mortgage fraud case to trial, because whereas she's facing up to 10 years for the perjury conviction, the 2 counts of mortgage fraud carry upwards of 50 to potentially 60 years in jail. Now, she's not going to get that, and the other distinction is the mortgage fraud is a felony. It might be a Class C felony, but it's a felony. The perjury conviction was a misdemeanor. So her law license might still be kept with a misdemeanor conviction, but not with a felony conviction. And the length of jail time, if she gets convicted on the mortgage fraud, which is much more serious than the perjury, would be extensive. And the facility where she would serve the time would change too. And if you make the U.S. Attorney's Office work for 2 convictions, they will be asking for a lot of sentencing time if she makes them work for that second verdict. So the smart thing now, and I think it's even going to be proposed, is to try to cut a deal to resolve the perjury conviction, as well as the pending mortgage fraud trial, which the trial date has not been set yet. But I think that would be the smart thing for her moving forward. And the last thing I'll say is this: if there were a mortgage fraud trial, that jury would learn the fact that she and Nick Mosby had a combined income of just under $400,000, of which they were earning 100% of that income during the COVID, the time frame when she did this. They would learn that they will be unforgiving when they learn that they were having 400 grand of income coming in and did not lose any money of it.
Jimmy, you get the final word on this, because we have a whole bundle of things to talk about crime in the city. Go ahead, Jim.
and this may be a small thing, but I think she has humbled herself through this process. She learned to shut up, which she did walking out of the court. She hasn't been very good at that in the past. And I think she may, again, I think she has humbled herself. And moving forward, I think she would be quicker to take a plea deal, to combine these and not draw the feds through another one of these processes.
When we come back, we're going to get into juvenile crime in Baltimore City, which is rampant. But first, the voice of Square Off, ladies and gentlemen. Here is Howard Mallison.
Hey, Richard, I'm sure you've seen some of the Barry Glazer TV commercials. They're different, they get your attention, and they also get results. That's why Barry Glazer and his team, including an in-house doctor, make no apologies for getting every penny they can from the insurance companies. So when it comes to personal injury or medical malpractice, there's only one choice: Barry Glazer at 410-547-8568. And there are lots of diners in Baltimore. The most famous of them all are the Double T diners.
Yep.
TT, totally terrific. You're sure to find the best breakfast, lunch, or dinner at the Double T diners. Enormous menu selections are great. There's Double T locations on Route 40, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Bel Air, Laurel, Annapolis, Pasadena, and the EC Diner in Ellicott City. Plus, try By the Docks in Middle River for their Monday night lobster specials.
Yummy.
They're all in the Double T family, right, Richard?
That's correct. Please
Back to you.
see our sponsors because the food is delicious. And Barry Glazer gets you pretty good case in court. Speaking of court, juvenile criminals are running rampant through the city of Baltimore. Now, this is all over the news, all over home video showing 12 and 14-year-olds just before 1 o'clock in the 2200 block of East Lombard Street. Now, this shocking video shows the juveniles jumping this woman, knocking her to the ground, punching her in the head, and taking her car keys. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the car started because it was a straight stick, manual transmission. Quick reacting Baltimore City police officers found the two kids, took the 12 and 14-year-olds to juvenile services in the Justice Center. 2 hours later, both released, no charges filed. Hassan, your thoughts about this?
Well, look, hey, Richard, this is a growing frustration amongst not only the citizens, but law enforcement, those over at the state's attorney's office and others who see this as a growing trend that is just exploding out of control. DJS, Department of Juvenile Services, really has to get a hold on it. They have tried to shift blame on the Baltimore City Police Department when we figured out that it actually was not them, but it's actually DJS intake officers. Juveniles are charged different and handled different than actual adult criminals. And in this case, thank God, number one, we have a crime crusader like Arch McCown, who was the neighbor who came out, who ran down after these juveniles. They ended up getting them caught because, like you said, they didn't know how to drive stick. But then we have 12-year-olds that we're coming across. Fox just did a great story on this the other day, where they're robbing people with guns. October 27th, armed robbery. Goes in, comes right back out the next day. 3 days later, another armed robbery. He robs a 31-year-old of their bike. Goes back in, 4 hours, they're released. Within 48 hours, Richard, he got 2 more armed robberies. Now, the question is, what are the consequences to the actions? Why would juveniles stop committing crime if DJS is not holding them for supervision and detention and not leveling any type of consequences on for their actions? It's out of control. Something needs to be done.
Right, I hope the legislature does something finally on this issue. Who wants to get up next? Jimmy?
It's a shame that these two kids didn't withdraw 90 grand out of their own account. They'd be up for federal charges for 75 years. See, as a city resident, this is what is so frustrating about this. I understand everybody wants a special session in Annapolis. For what? You can't even hold them to bring charges. I mean, honestly, what does everybody want from Annapolis? Hassan's absolutely right. There's no perception of consequences. Why wouldn't these kids continue to double down and get more and more and more egregious? This is ridiculous. It really is. And I'm so sick and tired of, well, Annapolis needs to do more on this. You can't even hold 2 hours. And where's the accountability with? It is so frustrating, Richard. It really is as a city resident. It really is.
Chris Kennedy, then Shannon Wright.
Yeah, from a different perspective in terms of trying to figure out a plan and communicate it on how to stop it going forward. This is part of what's known online as the Kia Challenge. It's an online social media game that kids are playing to see how many Kias and Hyundais they can steal and how fast they can start each car with a screwdriver and a USB cable. Now, Kia and Hyundai are facing a lot of pressure around the country. 23 states are pushing them to fix their cars for the anti-theft software that is not contained in it. And as a matter of fact, this very weekend at Arundel Mills Mall from 10 to 6 both days and Friday as well, there's going to be a free pop-up software upgrade center for anyone who has the Kia or a Hyundai between 2011 and 2020, those 2011 2022 models. And they can come in and get their car upgraded for free. It takes a half an hour. And for people that want to learn more about it, you just go to ksupport@kiausa.com with your VIN number, and that can get your Kia and Hyundai upgraded quickly.
Chris, I'm not saying that you're saying this, but this is why people get so frustrated with government, right? It's not the kids' fault. No, it's the auto manufacturers for not making the cars more secure. And this is the problem. It goes back to the squeegee kids, to all these stories where the criminals are being viewed as the victims. And that's part of the reason why you don't see anybody in power taking any solid stance with this stuff.
And part of the other reason is this: you brought in a juvenile secretary who believes in his own right. They ran out of DC, ran out of New York, because his mindset is we're not supposed to lock up any juvenile until they're 25 years of age. Right. He's more concerned about a book that he just released in September and doing book tours in New York that you see right on his social media, instead of getting to the crux of the problem here in Maryland to be able to solve this crisis that's going on. The only responsible adults in this fight seem to be U.S. Attorney Eric Barron and State's Attorney Ivan Bates.
Right.
Into this, Shannon, we'll get to you next. Wait. I want you to know that City Police Commissioner Richard Worley reports car thefts in Baltimore are up a shocking 229%. 70% of stolen cars are, as Chris mentioned, Kias and Hyundais, and teenage car thieves under the age of 18 in the city up 166%. Go ahead, Shannon.
So, okay, there's a couple of issues here. Number one, when you talk about putting these laws into place so that you can't question, you can't prosecute, you can't detain these youth, then there needs to be, and everyone keeps saying that we're not crippling the police from being able to do their job, but there needs to be other supports. Number one, I'm not understanding why you would put the cart before the horse. Why not have the supports in place, the resources in place, so that if you're not going to allow these children to actually face the weight of the consequences of what they did, that you've got that already in place? Because now what's happening is you don't want the children to be put through the criminal justice system, but you don't have the other part that needs to be some sort of a deterrent in place. So they go in and they come out. If we thought it was a revolving door before, I'm not even sure they're touching the door to go in to come back out at this point. So in my mind, one of the resources, one of the keys that needs to be put in place is when a parent comes to pick up their child, the parent needs to be asked questions. Number one, is your child causing problems at home? Is there a problem at home? Is there some way we can help you? Because what needs to happen is, if the parents can't control the child, they need to have to be able to say, and be able to say, we need help with this child, number one, or they're condoning it, because it's one of two things. Either the parent wants help with a wayward child, or the parent doesn't think it's that bad. But the parents need to be brought into the mix.
Richard, look, these kids are
Jimmy,
not selling.
Jimmy, hold that great point, and let Chris, because he was in there.
So these kids are not selling the cars or the parts. They're abandoning them very quickly within a day or less, because it's a game for them. It's an extension of a video game which moves into real life as a diversion for lots of reasons that are wrong. But if you remove the shiny object, okay, if the word gets out that the Kias and Hyundais now can't get stolen quickly with a screwdriver and a USB cable, then they'll stop stealing the cars. So I'm not putting it on the automakers, Jimmy. I'm just saying, if you fix this software, I think pretty quickly the Kia challenge online will go away.
No,
Jimmy,
But it'll move to a next one.
This is
hold
ridiculous.
on, Shannon.
Turkey
Jimmy.
challenge. There's always going to be cars that you can steal. Why not have a hickey? Why not start locking these kids up? I'm not putting them into put them into adult prisons. Why not put them into juvie for a year? They're criminals. That's the reality at the end of the day. Okay, and you can stop blaming the people that aren't committing the crimes for being the source of the people that are committing the crimes, to giving them the avenue to do it. That's the whole problem. Not you, Chris. I'm not blaming you, but this is the whole problem. Lock them up. Put them into the system. What is so wrong with that?
All right,
I think
One last thing, Richard. One last thing.
hold
This
on,
is not
Hassan.
crime. Okay, it's not a shiny thing. These vehicles are the way people get to work, get their kids to school, go to the grocery store. Anybody that's owned a vehicle knows that when it's totaled in a collision, you don't get full value from the insurance companies. Insurance is going up as a result of it. This is not a victimless crime. These are criminals, and they need to be treated as such.
Well, no, wait, Hassan mentioned Channel 45 News. They also spoke with the mother of the 14-year-old kid who was with the 12-year-old who knocked the woman down and tried to steal her stick shift car. And she told them, Channel 45, that she can't control her son at all. A boy, she says, who won't listen and is impossible to discipline. His mother says her son is spiraling out of control since her husband, the boy's stepfather, was murdered 2 years ago. Her son, she says, was charged with auto thefts back in July, September, and October, and walked out 2 hours after he and his 12-year-old buddy were dropped off at juvenile justice. Hassan.
Well, see, part of the problem is, again, and I think the mayor was frustrated about this a few weeks ago. It was another Fox report where the 16-year-old who was shot trying to and ended up dying, unfortunately, trying to steal another automobile. His father was in court prior to that, begging the magistrate to detain his son because they needed services. What we need to do, and unfortunately, we've been meeting with legislators in both the judiciary and the House and the Senate. I think that come the session, you're going to see child in need of services. It's called SINS. They're going to start using this process more. That's getting the adults involved, but also responsible for their children, and then probably trying to get these programs. Number two, they're going to need to put a lot more money and resources into the Department of Juvenile Services, because right now they just don't have the level of programming and facilities they need for all the influx of juvenile crime that we're seeing. And number three, they have to start to strengthen these juvenile laws. Right now, wear, carry, and transport of a handgun, every child has a handgun these days, is only a misdemeanor, and it only serves up to 6 months of probationary period. That is far too lenient of a sentence when you're talking about a deadly weapon like a handgun.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with Shannon and her opinion. We've got other things to talk about right here on Square Off. Here's Howard once again.
Thank you, Rich. You know, for fine dining, special occasions, or just watching sports in the sports bars, Pappas should be your number one choice. Enjoy a Pappas crab cake, or as Richard, what do you call it, Rich?
Fab cakes.
That's right.
They're
And they're
fabulous.
Oprah's favorite. For one of the many delicious choices, there's tons of delicious choices on the Pappas menu. And Pappas ships their crabs all over the country with 4 locations, including their newest sports bar and restaurant in Bel Air. See you at Pappas. And Leading Edge Auto Body and Mechanical Repair want you to know that the insurance companies cannot tell you where to take your car. Richard and his family have been taking their cars to Leading Edge for years. They work on all makes and models. They offer free pickup anywhere in the Baltimore area. Give Leading Edge a call at 410-433-6433 or visit them at 5807 Falls Road in Mount Washington. They make your car look and run like new again. Right, Rich?
That is correct. And in lieu of anything, I'm telling you that the guys and the women over at Leading Edge, they do great work. Annabelle's car was in this week for a bunch of stuff, and they do a terrific job, and the prices are very reasonable. Don't listen to your insurance company. You know, you can go wherever you want. Go ahead, Shannon, you had something you wanted to say about this.
So I think that when we look at the resources and the programs that are going to be going through the juvenile justice system, as long as we still have the leadership at the top that believes children shouldn't be persecuted or prosecuted, we're still going to have a problem with all of that coming through there. This is a man that needs a reality check. These children need guidance. The Bible says, teach them in the way that they're supposed to go, so when they go, they don't go away from that. We're missing that. We are missing the mark completely. The lessons we are teaching these children is push that envelope as far as you can, ain't nothing gonna happen, and you're gonna be all good. That's the lesson we're teaching them. So when these children grow up and then they are of that age where everybody feels it's okay to put them in jail, what kind of criminals are we going to be creating? We have to do things today that secure tomorrow, and we are not doing that. We are falling far short of the mark.
Hassan, Mayor Brandon Scott, you mentioned him, says, and these are his words, I have tasked members of my administration with developing and carrying out a multi-pronged strategy designed to mobilize every tool in our toolbox to tackle this issue. Jimmy, what do you think about that quote?
Well, let me.
You can't keep them in the building for more than 2 hours. Okay, what is this multi-pronged? Yeah, the thing. Okay, on a window, they catch these kids. They've committed the crime many times prior. They have them in their custody, and they can't hold on to them for more than 2 hours. What multi-pronged attack? Seriously, it's
It'll take more than the 2 hours you can hold them in jail to get the toolbox out to try and do something. Come on now.
Well, and not a multi-pronged approach is not suing Kia and Hyundai, right? That is not an approach to criminal justice and the crime that we see in the city. We need BPD officers who are present, who are look, the majority of them don't even want to write the citations that we put for low-level crimes, let alone get them right when they actually do. We had a hearing before City Council. Of the 70 or so citations that were written thus far since the citation docket started, over 97% were wrong and inaccurate and had to be thrown out. So it's a process, and it's a process that isn't working coming from this administration. And it's sad to say that multi-pronged approach just isn't working.
Yeah, just, you know what? Make sure you're wearing your seatbelt and you're not talking on your cell phone, because they'll get you for that. You don't pay that ticket, your license is suspended. Then they'll pull you over for driving with suspended tax. See, that they're very efficient one. Police did their job. They got the bad guy. They got him.
Well, they're handing out clubs, Jimmy. What more do you want? All you need is a club to put on your automobile. Hey, that's
yeah,
it.
but I'm gonna
That's
use
all.
the club on somebody. It's not for my steering wheel. That you to be more effective in that manner.
Richard, again, go to ksupport@kiausa.com. Nobody's suing the auto manufacturers. They're just asking them to please do a voluntary recall to upload the software, which takes half an hour, which prevents these kids from stealing cars with a screwdriver and a USB cable. Yes, you guys are right that they should be prosecuted, but if they don't get the car to begin with, then they're not going to have to get prosecuted. So maybe last thing, again, Arundel Mills Mall this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10 to 6 for free. It takes less than a half an hour.
All right.
2011 to 2022, Hyundais and Kias, those are the targets.
That'll
Well,
solve.
Or a sponsor list now that you've given them commercials. No, what, Jimmy? What?
I said, then the problem's solved, right? Look, here's my thing. I'm gonna leave the key in my ignition and not worry about somebody stealing my car. Honestly, the thing is, these kids have no morals. They know there are no consequences. We're not talking about petty crimes here. And by the way, a lot of times it's not just stealing cars on this viral challenge that you're talking about, Chris. It's also carjackings, violent assaults that are coming along with it. These kids are carrying guns. It's not just kids that are setting a video game.
Right. All of you're right about that. Okay. But in terms of the Kia Challenge game,
Oh my gosh, Chris.
please. Maybe we can reduce some of it if people would just do this.
Chris, how many Hyundais and Kias do you drive?
Richard, I'm not as wealthy as you, so I can't afford multiple cars like you have. I know you have a stable of vehicles and a host of people to treat them and care for them every day.
I'm still in my 55 Henry J. Really?
Stuck in an episode of Perry Mason, no doubt. Yes.
That's right. Next week. What, Jimmy?
And you could start it with a screwdriver and a USB cable.
Right, it's some duct tape. I haven't stolen a car in a few years. Thank you all.
all these kids should go out to Arundel Mills, because think about how many Hondas and Kias will be out there. I mean, they could rack these things up and
Well, they just stole some cars from the
Chris.
Ravens Stadium on Sunday during
Right.
the Ravens game. Go figure.
Chris, we're just pulling your leg. You
I know. It's funny, but it's not. So
and he
That is
didn't.
correct.
Didn't
Next
even-
week, we'll have an extended show on the crisis in the Middle East. The new announcement that they will cease military operations in Gaza for 4 hours each day in select neighborhoods in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. So that's a tough situation over there. We'll get to that. One of our guests will be Rabbi Mitchell Wahlberg. I want to thank all of you for joining us here at squareoff.net. And now also on YouTube. Go to YouTube and write in Square Off with Richard Sher. Thank you all. Chris, Jimmy, Pastor Wright, and Hassan Giordano. And we will see you all next week. And once again, we square off. Goodbye. Be safe.